This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
A global tragedy as if close to home, and the United Nations is united in grief.
UN mourns colleagues killed in Ethiopia plane crashes. Ethiopia, China and other countries ground Boeing aircraft. President Cyril Ramaphosa to co-chair South Africa-Zimbabwe bi-national commission. And an update on Egypt's latest counter-terrorism operations. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Karen Roberts, live in Nairobi. Rama Nyang joins me now with all your business headlines.
Thank you very much, Karen. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. We'll be in Egypt looking at the latest annual urban consumer price inflation. It's gone up to 14.4% in February. Over in East Africa, earnings season continues. Barclays Kenya reporting net earnings up by 7% to $70 million for 2018. The details of the stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Karen.
Thank you very much, Rama. Investigators have reportedly recovered the black box from the Ethiopian Airlines crash site. As teams search for clues, questions are being asked about the plane, a Boeing 737 MAX 8. It's the second accident in 6 months for that particular model, prompting China, Ethiopia, Mongolia and Indonesia to all ground the jet. The Ethiopian Airlines flight was headed to Nairobi when it went down minutes after takeoff on Sunday, killing all 157 people on board.
Red Cross workers sift through the wreckage of the Ethiopian Airlines crash. They collect remains as an excavator digs at the site. The Boeing 737 MAX 8, bound for Nairobi, crashed 6 minutes after takeoff, killing all 157 people on board. The cockpit voice recorder, as well as the flight data recorder, was recovered. Boeing sent a technical team to the scene of the crash to provide further assistance. The same model aircraft was involved in a Lion Air crash in Indonesia, killing 189 people. Indonesia joined a growing list of countries to ground Boeing's 737 MAX 8. Ethiopia grounded their aircraft model. China did as well, citing a zero tolerance for safety hazards. At least 35 nationalities were on board the Air Ethiopia flight, including 8 Chinese. Several airlines, including Fiji Airways and Singapore Airlines, plan to continue using the Boeing 737 MAX 8 for now. Boeing stocks, meanwhile, have dropped by about 10%. The company also canceled an event to showcase its new 777X airliner. Astatal, CGTN.
Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping sent his condolences to the victims' families and the leaders of Ethiopia and Kenya. He offered China's support if needed. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has also been in touch with the Ethiopian Prime Minister about the tragedy. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has paid tribute to UN victims of the Ethiopia plane crash. He said at least 21 UN staff were among those killed, some of whom were en route to a major UN Environment Programme assembly in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. The UN Assembly marked their deaths with a 1-minute silence at the start of the conference. The United Nations Refugee Agency, the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Programme were among some of the key UN agencies reporting staff losses as a result of the crash.
A global tragedy as it close to home, and the United Nations is united in grief. I extend my deepest condolences to the families and loved ones of all the victims, to the government of people of Ethiopia, and all these affected by this disaster. We are working closely with government officials on the ground and mobilizing assistance, counseling, and any other needed support during this difficult time.
Well, CGTN's Giram Chala has more for us from the crash site of the Ethiopian Airlines plane.
We are here on the scene of the crash about 70 kilometers away from the capital, Addis Ababa. As you can see, the impact of the crash is unexplainable. This is the whole plane that you can see, and if the camera can move, you can see more as well. This whole metal scrap that you can see is the whole aeroplane that came out of the digging that is happening over there, and there's no way that anyone can rescue, perhaps if there is anyone who could have survived this kind of dangerous crash. The doomed plane, just to remind you, was flying from Addis Ababa to Nairobi, and 6 minutes into the air, it crashed right here and it killed all its passengers, 149 passengers and 8 crew members. All of them, unfortunately, have died. At the moment, we have heard that the black box was found. It was transported to the capital, Addis Ababa, where Ethiopian Airlines headquarters is, and there is a team of experts also coming from Boeing, the manufacturer of this 737 MAX 800 plane, and they are going to find out what really happened before the crash took place in this area. The pilot, we have heard, was talking about faulty activities around him, and he asked to return back to the base, which is the airport, Ethiopian Airlines airport back in Addis Ababa. Unfortunately, he lost communication after 6 minutes, and that all can be found out when the black box is going to be examined. That is happening at the moment. There is more information coming up. Ethiopian Airlines, through its team, is working, as you can see, around the clock to take out all that is evidence, or to establish who the victims were. We understand that Ethiopian Airlines is one of the safest airlines in the world, and also one of the most successful one. Safety has been a priority for the airliner for a long time, and this was one of the unfortunate incidents, the crash that happened here. The digging is going on, as you can see over there. Big heavy machineries of construction are digging. We have heard about 10 meters has been dug by the impact of the plane's crash over there. We understand that there is more job to be done to establish who the people are who were deceased because of the impact, as I was saying earlier, and more work should be done as well to establish as to what happened, and the black box is going to support. For now, this is the information we have, and when we get more, we'll provide that. Grumtara CGTN at the crash site of Ethiopian Airlines plane east of Oromia.
Let's take a quick look at flight recorder devices and why finding them is so crucial. Black boxes are an important part of investigating the cause of plane crashes. Here's why. Flight recorders on aeroplanes are there to record in-flight information. Their data can be used in the event of an incident or an accident. Commercial aircraft have 2 types of black box recorders, generally located at the back of the aircraft. The cockpit voice recorder, which captures pilot conversations, sounds and announcements from the cockpit, and the flight data recorder, which lists hundreds of technical flight details such as plane altitude, speed, temperature and the flight path. Well, the total length of the cockpit voice recorder recording is 2 hours. For the flight data recorder, it is 25 hours. Designed to protect data recorded during an accident, black boxes can resist extreme temperatures in case of fire and submersion in water thousands of meters deep. Well, it's not yet clear what caused the accident. Experts have said that it's too early to draw any conclusions. However, Ethiopian Airlines says the pilot had reported difficulties and had asked to return to Addis Ababa. Well, the visibility was said to be good, but air traffic monitor Flight Radar 24 reported that the plane's vertical speed was unstable after takeoff. The aircraft was headed to Nairobi from Bole International Airport. It crashed southeast of the capital, Addis Ababa. Ethiopian Airlines CEO Tewolde Gebre-Mariam says that it's hard to rule out anything at this moment in time. Well, we are now joined live by Otto de Vries. He is the CEO of the Association of South African Travel Agents. Thank you very much for joining us. At this stage, as we've been saying, we do not know what caused this crash. However, we do know that this plane was new. It was a new design with new software. Do you think, in general terms, that pilots receive adequate training to handle new aircraft designs?
Well, I think before we get started, it's important just to acknowledge our condolences and thoughts to the family of the victims of the air crash. And obviously our thoughts also go out to our colleagues from Ethiopian Airlines in this very difficult and challenging time. I think it would be unfair for me to comment about whether airline pilots are appropriately trained. I'm no expert in the airline field, but I can certainly vouch for the fact that I know that airline safety is one of the most important and most critical components of safety and compliance that exists today, and I have no doubt that Ethiopian Airlines and all airlines that are a member of the IATA Alliance and are well trained, well equipped and well prepared to be able to operate the aircraft that they are trained to be able to fly.
Let's talk about this particular model, Boeing 737 MAX series. It's faced growing skepticism since the Lion Air crash in October. What do you think about the concern of passengers?
Well, you know, I think there is every reason to be concerned. The fact that we have a brand new aircraft that within a 4-month period has seen what appears at this early stage to be very, very similar situations in which we saw these rather horrific crashes, aircrafts taking off, and there are definitely problems with the takeoff speed, and so there's clearly something common. It would be presumptuous for me to assume that it is the same, and we know that the necessary investigations that will take place will certainly give us clarity, but I think it should certainly be giving everybody food for thought. There's no doubt in my mind from a passenger perspective it's going to feel uncomfortable that this has been a situation that has occurred on 2 occasions that are this similar, and I think that steps that are being taken by various civil aviation authorities should also be taken into account at this point.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. That was Otto de Vries there, the CEO of the Association of South African Travel Agents. Now let's focus on the victims of the crash. Victims on board the jet came from 35 different countries. Among them were 8 Chinese passengers. CGTN's Sun Ye has their stories.
8 Chinese, 5 men, 3 women are confirmed dead from the crash of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Among them, Jin Yetao from Aviation Industry of China International and Zhou Yuan with China Electronic Technology Group Corporation. The companies told CGTN they are shocked and deeply saddened over their losses.
His wife will depart for Addis Ababa tonight. We feel is our mission and also our vision to do his loved mission. We should continue.
We still can't believe this happened. It's with sorrow that we now start emergency procedures. Our emergency response team landed in Ethiopia on Monday afternoon local time and has started to work with the help of the Chinese embassy there. Zhou Yuan's relatives are heading there soon. Zhou was so dear to all of us, and we at CETC are sad, but resolved to work hard as Zhou did.
While the investigation of the crash is still underway, China's Civil Aviation Authority on Monday grounded all of its commercial Boeing 737 MAX 8s. Chinese airlines are reported to have an estimated 96 such planes.
China has responded very quickly to the incident. This has come from a high sense of responsibility for passengers. After all, the model has seen similar incidents in similar situations within less than 6 months. Even though no conclusion can be drawn at this early stage of the investigation, it's good to act on the safe side.
Wang expects the incident not to affect the model's Chinese operation in the long run, citing quick resolution and adjustment as the industry's practice. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including UNEP Assembly open under shadow of flight crash. And a one-on-one with Ethiopia's first woman president.
Data out of the country country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Perina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is travelling to Zimbabwe tonight to co-chair a bi-national commission on deepening economic ties between his country and its northern neighbour.
Home to millions of its citizens who've sought greener pastures, a source of many goods available locally, and a pillar of diplomatic support, South Africa is Zimbabwe's most important neighbour, one with which it has historically been joined at the hip.
Post-independence, you also look at how instrumental Zimbabwe was for South Africa to attain its black majority rule, how vocal Zimbabwe was to slap the apartheid regime with sanctions. Then you also look at the symbiotic role, the symbiotic relationships, the crucial role that South Africa played, especially during the decade crisis from 2000 up to the formation of the GNU. So you realize that South Africa can only prosper meaningfully if there is a better Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe cannot go anywhere without endorsement, blessing and interaction with South Africa.
In 2018, South Africa bought 52% of Zimbabwe's exports and accounted for over 40% of imports. As the two nations convene to forge even stronger economic ties, Zimbabwe is aiming to swing the balance of trade more in its favor.
We are exporting predominantly raw materials and minerals. So we are exporting jobs, so to say, and even we're exporting value. So we need to make sure that there is more value addition locally for us to benefit from this trade.
To do so, local businesses are seeking financial support from across the border.
There are various investment opportunities that are there that the South Africans are trying to look into so that they can also expand the economic activity in the country. The investment front is looking positive, it's promising, but there are issues that need to be tackled at both economic and political level so that we move forward with speed on the same.
There have been suggestions that President Cyril Ramaphosa could help give fresh impetus to currently stalled inter-party talks, returning South Africa to the important mediation role it has previously played here. Something that might help Zimbabwe move forward politically and economically, and also bring mutual benefit to South Africa and stability to the entire region. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
3 Egyptian military officers have been killed during the country's latest counter-terrorism operations. A statement from the armed forces has also confirmed the death of 46 militants in this campaign. Egypt is still in a state of emergency as its war on terror extends for the 6th year. Here's Adel El-Bakhrouhi with more.
Egypt appears to have a long way ahead in its comprehensive counter-terrorism military campaign. On Monday, the armed forces has released its latest progress reports. The numbers are still staggering. The statement announced killing 46 militants, the military spokesman described as extremely dangerous terrorists. 15 shelters for militants have been destroyed and 4 vehicles used for attacks in the Sinai. 100 suspected criminals and terrorists have been arrested in the same region. Security threats, according to the military announcement, surrounded the country. 144 cross-border smuggling vehicles have been destroyed on the southern and western borders with Sudan and Libya, respectively. It is clear that militant group operation, however limited it has become, it is still ongoing and poses danger on the country. 10 underground tunnels have been discovered in the Sinai, as well as 204 improvised explosive devices. The Egyptian armed forces has invested tremendously in this comprehensive military campaign. Meanwhile, the entire country remains under the state of emergency. Marking the same week as the Martyrs' Day, the armed forces has lost 3 of its officers in these recent operations. Adel El-Bakhrouhi, CGTN, Cairo.
Staying in North Africa, President Abdelaziz Bouteflika has returned to Algeria amid mass protests. The 82-year-old leader landed in the capital, Algiers, after 2 weeks in Switzerland for a medical checkup. Coinciding with his return was the start of a 5-day strike across the country to protest at his running for a 5th term. Large parts of the country were brought to a standstill as workers joined the demonstrations. In the centre of Algiers, many shops remained closed in support. Calls for the strike had been gathering momentum on social media in the days prior. The ruling FLN party stated that they have been working with all political parties to end the current crisis with minimum damage. Sahle-Work Zewde was elected Ethiopia's president in October 2018. She became the first female president, raising hopes among advocates for gender equality in the conservative Eastern African country. Her election was unanimously approved by the Ethiopian parliament to replace Mulatu Tesome, who resigned unexpectedly a day earlier. CGTN's Giram Chala had an exclusive interview with the Ethiopian president.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for talking to CGTN and helping us achieve this interview this morning. Let's just talk about your presidency. Currently, you are the first Ethiopian president, female president, and the only one in Africa, too.
You know, when I was appointed ambassador close to 3 decades ago, I took it as the greatest honor than one could have, representing your country abroad. But I can tell you now that there is no greater honor and immense privilege than being asked to be the president and the first president of Ethiopia. But I also know it's a very humbling call, by the way. But I also know that it comes with a huge responsibility. So I'm ready for that.
Madam President, I understand it's been a few months since you took the office of president in this country, but there are lots of things happening in Ethiopia, mostly positive. Also, some things need to be addressed at the same time. But what would you say are some of your achievements in this short period of time and some of the highlights that you've gotten out of your time in the office?
As you have rightly said, we are in this transition period in Ethiopia when there is a lot to do. And as you have said, we have our achievements, but we also have our challenges that we need to seriously address. Having said that, I mean, 4 months is a short period of time to really talk about achievements. But I can say at this point of time that I have really made it a point that I can really shed light on the many activities going on in this country.
Talking at the Parliament 4 months back on your acceptance speech, you said we need to work together to see a better Ethiopia now, peaceful. And you said your priority will be, dictating and helping people understand how peace should work and how our country need to move forward than where we are at the moment. What, Madam President, will continue to be your priority from now on as well?
I will advocate every single day in whatever I do that it has to be anchored towards having a peaceful, united Ethiopia. For me, Ethiopia has been there, Ethiopia is now, and Ethiopia will have to continue. So this is what is at the center of any of my activities, and I truly believe in it.
The UN Environment Programme Assembly opened in Nairobi with a somber mood after 22 United Nations staff were killed in the Ethiopian Airlines plane crash. As many of the dead were heading to the annual event, delegates arrived to see the UN flag flying at half-mast, and all of the flags of the UN nations that usually adorn the UNEP headquarters building were taken down. Over 4,700 heads of state, ministers, business leaders, senior UN officials and civil society representatives are attending the meeting. Meanwhile, as climate change continues to threaten lives and livelihoods, scientists from all over the world are seeking to combat its impact on fragile ecosystems. Well, a group of scientists meeting in Nairobi are seeking innovative solutions to save the critical third pole region.
Scientists from all over the world are assembling at the week-long United Nations Environmental Assembly in Nairobi in search of solutions to climate change. This group of scientists is searching for solutions to save the third pole region. When we think of the world's polar regions, only two usually spring to mind, the North and South Poles. But there is a region to the south of China and the north of India that is known as the third pole. 10 of Asia's largest rivers begin here, including the Yellow River and Yangtze River in China and the Ganges, which flows through India and Bangladesh. It is estimated that the water that flows from the third pole supports nearly 1/5 of the world's population. The third pole, because it is high above sea level, is also sensitive to changes in temperatures. The pan-third pole is widely acknowledged as Asia's water tower. This region is crucial to the global sustainability of water supply. However, global warming is now taking its toll on this region.
Our warming of climate is melting the glaciers and all the heads of the rivers. And that kind of process is causing immediate disasters. And that kind of process destroyed villages, the pastures, and also cause loss of lives.
Rivers are shrinking. This is going to be bad news for the Amazon. And the water supply, which is critically needed for people in Peru in the coastal areas, crop, livestock, is decreasing.
Scientists believe the solution lies in international collaborations. The Pan-Third Pole Environment Project was established in 2009. It is aimed at explaining environmental changes in the region and finding sustainable solutions.
The Chinese Academy of Sciences has put, let's say, 1.6 billion Chinese yuan to address such important scientific questions, and also to help society and the policymakers to also make their changes.
A reduction in greenhouse gases and black soot emissions can prevent the glaciers in the third pole region from disappearing further. Bulletin, CGTN, Nairobi.
To China's annual two sessions in Beijing now. The Minister of Ecology and the Environment, Li Ganjie, has praised the country's efforts at fighting its chronic air pollution problem, saying its policies were beginning to see some positive results.
In 2018, the proportion of days with fairly good air quality in 338 cities in China was 79.3%. That is an increase of 1.3% year-on-year. The annual average concentration of PM2.5 has decreased by 9.3%. The density of PM2.5 in the Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei region, the Yangtze River Delta in eastern China, and the Fenway Plain in northern China decreased by 11.8%, 10.2%, and 10.8% respectively. In Beijing, there is a 12.1% decrease.
Well, the minister said China was focusing hard on environmental protection, adding that the country's policy of high-quality growth was an important part of this effort. He said China was using all its resources to tackle the problem, including money, education and technology, and that the government would provide 60 billion yuan towards the fight this year, an increase of about a third on 2018. Well, let's now go over to Rama for all the latest business news. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Here's what's coming up in business. Egypt's annual urban consumer price inflation rises to 14.4% in February. And we'll be checking in Kenya's earnings season. Barclays Kenya is reporting net earnings of $17 million, up 7% year-on-year.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest divers on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's run through some macro data to begin with. Egypt's annual urban consumer price inflation has increased to 14.4% in February, up about 200 basis points or so from January's numbers. Now, the figures potentially halt what some analysts expected to be the start of an easing cycle. Inflation had cooled off to about 12% in December. That's after an increase in fuel, electricity and transportation prices last year sent urban inflation to a high of 17.7% in October. Prices in transport were up the most, up 32%. Food and beverage prices up 15.3% year on year. The accommodation, water, electricity, gas and fuel sector saw price hikes of 15.2% on average. On the other hand, education prices were up by 15.1%. On to East Africa now. Earnings season does continue in Kenya. Barclays now reporting net earnings of $17 million for the 2018 fiscal year. That represents a 6.95% rise in net earnings year on year. Net interest income was pretty much flat, a 1% year on year rise to about $219 million. But non-interest income rose by about 15% to $91.8 million. The bank also invested fairly heavily in government securities with a near 210% rise in securities held for dealing to just under $300 million. Given the retention of Kenya's rate cap law, the bank's chief financial officer indicated that the bank's focus on government securities isn't going to change, at least not in the short term.
So the long and short of this is to say, in the short term, that will not change. As we introduce more services, then that helps us in terms of the array of products that we can be able to give our customers. But then last to that really would be depending on where this interest control discussion will head. Right now, the discussions have improved. If you look at last year, the floor on deposit has been removed. So one big plus for the banking industry.
Barclays is the third bank after KCB Group and Stanbic Holdings to announce growth in full-year results. A little later on Global Business, we'll have a more detailed analysis of Barclays Kenya earnings, especially its mobile lending proposition with its CFO. Now, still on matters banking, the fallout from South Africa's VBS Bank has become, frankly, one of the most serious corruption scandals to rock the country. The regional bank collapsed last November following the South African Reserve Bank's report that more than 50 individuals looted about $130 million from the bank's coffers. As CGTN's Asta Tal now reports, some of the people who fell victim are still waiting to be compensated for their losses.
Fear spread through rural communities across South Africa in November of last year, when VBS, a regional bank that catered to poorer customers, collapsed. The bank was left in ruins after the Central Bank of South Africa disclosed in a report that more than 50 people stole $130 million, hitting its poor clients hard.
It is so really difficult. You know, it is something that just happened. You didn't prepare for it. You know, it just happened, and then it caught you in surprise, you know, and it caught out you find yourself caught out guard, that you don't know where to go to, and then the 100,000 cannot help you.
The collapse hit businesses hard, like Mulodzi's auto repair shop. For 25 years, the garage offered repairs to drivers navigating the potholed road, which is 460 kilometers north of Pretoria. Mulodzi, who started saving with VBS in 1987, lost shares and cash worth about $145,000 following the bank's collapse.
It really affected us, you know, it have pulled us back. It have slow our performance, slow our income, slow our cash flows, also slow our outflow of vehicle that goes out every day.
Some of the people were sleeping there, waiting for the bank to open, because they were told to withdraw 1,000 per day. You can imagine, when you have got 50,000 or more than 50,000, how many days are you going to come back every now and then?
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has pledged to stamp out graft, vowing to prosecute those responsible for the missing funds. However, no arrests have been made, and individuals like Mulodzi are still counting the days, waiting to see whether lost money and shares will be compensated. Asta Tal, CGTN.
Output at Libya's largest single oil field, El Sharara, is set to be restored to about 300,000 barrels of oil a day in about 2 weeks' time. Now, the surge in output comes after the massive Libyan oil field restarted operation in the wake of a long closure, mainly due to security concerns. According to the North African nation-state oil company, the NOC, the closure of El Sharara in December caused a production loss of nearly $2 billion. Last week, the firm disclosed that it would restore the 20,000 barrels per day production capacity that was lost due to vandalism and looting. El Sharara currently produces about 135,000 or so barrels of crude every day. On to governance matters now. The African Capacity Building Foundation, or the ACBF, says it's necessary for the continent to address the capacity deficit seen across the continent if it is to achieve much better development and much better governance, particularly in the public sector. According to the AU's specialized agency, for it to succeed in its mandate, it needs adequate, predictable and sustainable funding from African states. Here's CGTN's Girum Chala now in conversation with the Executive Secretary of the ACBF, Professor Emmanuel Nadozie.
Each year, each period, when we publish our African Capacity Report, as I said, which is our flagship publication, we do measure the capacity that countries have developed and how they are moving. And so we have an indices that we use to do that. So the Capacity Development Index helps us to determine where countries are. The good news is, if you compare to 15, 20 years ago, when you used to have a large proportion of them in the low capacity category, Today, you have the larger proportion in the medium capacity category. But of course, our goal is to have as many of them as possible in the high capacity category. A country like Rwanda, again, features there. A country like Ghana, or even Morocco, or Tunisia, or Malawi, or Burkina Faso, those are the sort of countries that one can see right away have really attained that kind of high capacity level.
In a nutshell, what are the suggested ways of perhaps developing capacity in Africa, including in regional communities or at the government levels throughout the continent?
Yes, of course, the first thing is to understand the nature of the problem and the magnitude of the problem. And this is what ACBF has done. We have done three important studies on the capacity dimensions of our capacity imperatives for achieving Agenda 2063. We then put together a strategy for addressing the challenge. So we have done that already, and it's available for anybody who wants to look at that.
Obviously, capacity building is not only important to perhaps harness the potentials of a certain country or achieve continental agendas. It's also important to engage African states with their partners, such as China. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, countries which have better strategies and delivery mechanisms can benefit better, is well known. According to you, how are you planning to support African states to perhaps partner better with China?
We have the most simplest thing that one can see is that to have consultation and a good strategy for engagement with China, because China has a strategy for engagement with Africa. And on the other side, you don't see that. And secondly, too, that there should be an approach of working together so that you don't work against each other in the continent here to dissipate your own interest.
One last story for you, this one from Somalia, where an all-female run centre is empowering women with the skills they need to start small enterprises. It's called WAMO Women's Development Organization. It offers free vocational training to hundreds of women in the port city of Kismayo and the surrounding areas. The initiative promotes handcrafted products while also encouraging women to increase their output. Here's CGTN's Abdulaziz below with more.
These women are singing while weaving mats and baskets at this women's center in southern Somalia. The all-female run center is one of several of its kind in Kismayo that seeks to empower women with skills to start small businesses. Founded in 2014, WAMO Women's Development Organization has trained hundreds of women with various skills, including weaving, tailoring, cooking, and designing.
We train women with different skills, from hairstylists to cooks to tailors and to clothing designers. Women who have received training here have established business centers in the city and sustained their families. We opened the center 5 years ago and rely only on support from other local women in Kismayo and surrounding areas.
For years, weaving has been a traditional skill of the people in southern Somalia. Locally available products are combined together to create mats such as these, popular among many in Somalia. This center offers free vocational training to hundreds of women in Kismayo and surrounding regions. Women here are also trained on the importance of protecting the environment by creating environmentally friendly products using locally viable resources.
This basket is made from locally available plants that grow in our country. It is environmentally friendly, unlike polythene bags. It does not pose any threat to the livestock and the environment because it can easily decompose.
The center also serves as a local industry, supplying the local market with baskets, mats, and clothes designed in a traditional manner. Women also earn a living by selling colorfully designed fabric known as bati. Women at this center still dye the fabric the old way by hand.
I train them in a group of 15 or 20. We tie the fabric in different patterns before placing them in different shades of dyes. After a few hours, they come out with different colors like the one I'm wearing now.
The initiative has also promoted handcrafted products while also encouraging women to increase their production capacity. Traditional artifacts are also available at the center. Women say the society must play a role in safeguarding the rich cultural heritage of the Somali people and are now appealing for funds to expand their center so as to accommodate more women. Abdulaziz Bilon, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. We're looking at tough times ahead, perhaps. Several countries have decided to ground the Boeing 737 MAX 8 jets. Ethiopia, Morocco are among them. So what happens now for Boeing? Because remember, this is the bread and butter of the business, as it were. We'll have some answers for you live from Addis Ababa and Washington, D.C. from 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Karen.
Thank you very much, Rama. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Senegalese women highlight dangers of illegal immigration.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In West Africa, a group of Senegalese women have been raising awareness about illegal migration challenges. They use poems and traditional dances to illustrate the dangers faced by illegal migrants. Take a look.
Women migrants who have returned to Senegal got a chance to share their experiences in this event organized by the International Organization for Migration. Daya Fatou Sall worked as a maid in Saudi Arabia for 8 years.
When you go there, you will have a contract. It is a Saudi who has to make your contract. His name will be on your papers. When you get to the airport, first of all you lose your dignity because they take your passport. Over there you already lost your dignity. Then you are not allowed to leave the airport until the boss comes. He will come take your passport and take you like it was slavery, like you are sold.
Here, for example, it's the women who push their husbands, it's the women who push their children, it's the women who push their brothers, and it's the women who push their cousins, uncles, and others to leave the country, and it's the women who even push their daughters to leave the country.
Many Senegalese have died trying to flee the country in search of a better life.
It's more difficult for women to share their migration stories because they can be stigmatized. But some do engage, speak on the radio, and participate in these activities.
The awareness campaign hopes to especially reach out to mothers to discourage their children from dangerous migration acts. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
In order to give back to the community, the Chinese Community Policy Forum in South Africa held a charity donation for the River of Life Daycare Centre. The centre is situated in East London's underprivileged community in South Africa. More than 30 children will benefit from this initiative.
The overseas Chinese community donated rice, flour, oil and kilt and crucial school supplies, much needed support for the children at the home.
This is not for the first time that they give us this love of donation that can be a support to our children, and that the children can feel good to know that there are some people that have a heart of helping other children. Then they can also share with others the love that the Chinese Police Forum have shown to us.
Since its establishment, the Chinese Cape branch of Chinese CPF in South Africa has not only contributed to safeguarding the personal property and safety of the overseas Chinese working and living in Eastern Cape, but also impact the local community.
Community Policing Forum is making donation to the daycare center in the local community. Actually, over the past years, the Community Policing Center has done a lot
to help the social and economic development of a social community. And they also have made quite a few donations to the vulnerable groups, like a daycare center. So in this regard, actually, they have been trying to promote and carry on the greater tradition of benevolence, care, and love, which we cherish so much in our culture.
And for the local underprivileged communities, every year the donation comes in to fill a great need. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
After the break, we've got all the sports news coming up, including South Africa named squad for their do-or-die AFCON match against Libya.